Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, party people, and the place to be. Thank you for joining us on the political deep dive. Yeah, we had some rockin' music there, man. I was like in
Well,
the club.
and party people in the house tonight.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for joining the political deep dive. I'm Dave Valente, joined as always by Dan Fishman. How you doing,
What's
sir?
up?
And Joe Solosky. How you doing?
Excellent. Good to be here.
Good. All right. So tonight is the part 2 of the dumpster fire and review of the last year. And yeah, well, I mean, before we get too deep into the discussion about the last year, one of the bigger news stories of the year happened today. Former President Jimmy Carter passed away. Actually, I had two news stories in the last 6 months, in that he became the first president to turn 100 years old in October, and then passed away this afternoon around 1 or 2 o'clock this afternoon, and in Plains, Georgia. And you have to separate when it comes to Jimmy Carter. You have to separate like his presidency versus the humanitarian and the person he was, because there's no doubt that he was a genuinely good human being.
Yeah.
Probably one of the finest people to actually be president of the United States.
Yes.
Foreign policy wise, foreign domestic policy wise, not so much.
But you say that, and I think about just character.
Yes.
His character was always beyond reproach. The man had integrity, probably the most since Calvin Coolidge, I would say.
I think it's interesting too that to some extent those things may go hand in hand, because he did come to the office as sort of a naivete that I think did not serve him well. It served him well in some places. Let's not forget, the Camp David Accords,
yeah.
Peace between Israel and Egypt, which is the model for as much as things are a clusterfuck right now. I actually believe that this clusterfuck might be the death rattle.
Yeah.
There is
quite possibly.
What is going to come next is going to be very, very different from what has been there before.
And for the largest part, the peace between Israel and Egypt has held.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in fact, the only people who, have killed more civilians in Gaza than Israel is Egypt. With the blockade and other things about it, that the Egyptians are really fearful of the Gaza Hamas brand of extremism, and have done everything they can to. I mean, by all rights, Egypt could have taken Gaza back, right? Israel was certainly willing to give it to them.
Sure.
But Egypt didn't want it. And that's a testament to Carter. He believed that he could get it done. He got Sadat and Begin together, and they made peace. And that part of Carter was amazing. Also, he started a lot of deregulation as well. Really interesting for a Democrat to have taken the lead on that. A lot of stuff that Reagan gets credit for, the Carter administration started. But, the hostages in Iran is always going to be something that...
that was the death knell of the Carter presidency. I mean, I think he could have survived. But
I mean, it was tough too, because
444 days of hostages being held really just hung like an albatross around his neck, and then they had the failed rescue mission,
right?
That really was just completely incompetent.
Well, and now what's interesting about that is, what do you think would happen if that happened today?
You mean the botched rescue mission? Or...
No, not if an American embassy was seized, do you think our response would be as, let's generously say, tempered as Carter's response was? Or, would the United States instead say, we're going to come in there, we're going to take the risks?
What do you think about when They raided on the embassy in Benghazi. I mean, we were all appalled. We really didn't take.
That was more
Yeah,
of a one-time attack, though, versus a
yeah.
long-term
I
hold.
wouldn't say
But
that
we,
was sort of a state
Mm.
sponsored event.
but we, when we responded to terrorism, where they've held hostages, say in Beirut, in the '80s and early '90s, I mean, it wasn't like we were going in guns blazing there either. We
Right.
negotiated the release through the Iranian government, Iran Contra being the central theme of that. But
Right. It's interesting because I think that the Clinton era, which in many ways, right, Clinton is the first Democrat after Carter to
yeah,
hold office. Um, they sort of laid out a different sort of model, having learned from Carter's reticence. uh, you know, I think that they did get the hostages back. You have to give credit for that. On the other hand, uh, you know, and I confess I don't know how much there was negotiation of hold on
yeah,
to the hostages until Reagan gets in power.
that was. I mean, that's always been the conspiracy theory is that the Reagans, Bush
Right.
specifically, Poppy Bush, negotiated the release, but to be held off until Reagan took office, which it really didn't even matter at that point. They could have had those guys, if that was the case, they could have had them released the day after the election
Right.
and gotten them home sooner. Like there was no reason to hold them until Reagan sauntered into office. There were like that's
Right.
just cruel and unusual punishment for the people that were held, if true.
And I kind of agree with that. I don't think there's anything about it. I think that Iran really did have a feeling that Reagan wasn't going to sit back and be as passive. And
And really, by the time Reagan comes into office, this is when the theocracy had really started taking hold in Iran,
right.
because they did do a transitional government after the fall of the Shah. So for about a year, um, it was just the rumors of the United States doing another, uh, especially essentially an Operation Ajax on the Ayatollah that drove the students to go into the embassy. I don't know. I mean, like if tomorrow, say, the government in Saudi Arabia falls and this, bunch of students storm the embassy in Riyadh, would we go in? I don't know.
It's such an interesting question because, first of all, I mean, I think a lot of American military response is based on our inability to do anything then. And you look at other large scale special forces operations about things like this, such as the Israeli raid on Entebbe, or some other larger scale hostage releases, and then the emphasis in the United States military on special forces operations from 1980 onwards. We built this sort of incredibly elite corps with
Yeah,
air power, et cetera. I don't know. Hopefully, we'll never
but I
find out.
think there's there's a difference between, like, because I think the Israelis understand that there is I hate to make it sound cold, that there is an acceptable amount of casualties in a rescue operation. They want none, but if
Well,
something happens,
until 2017, the Israeli policy was all hostages are assumed dead. That is our military strategy. We're not going to negotiate for them. We're not going to do anything. Let's talk about the operation that we're willing to undertake to bring back the corpses. And that's a big thing in Judaism as well.
yeah,
You have to bury
of
the
course,
corpses properly, but the corpses are dead. It's not going to be an issue if, the terrorists shoot corpses a few more times. We're going to storm the building. We're going to take everybody. And from that period, there were very few hostages taken.
sure,
And
yeah,
then, things go crazy, and the Israelis, Hezbollah sees a soldier, and they trade him for 5,000 prisoners.
Yeah.
And so here we go, right? And so that's where you want to be in the place. You want to be in a place that nobody thinks it's worthwhile.
Yeah. The
to
cost
take
is too
hostages.
high.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think we as Americans get kind of spoiled in the idea that we see these movies like Iron Eagle, or
Right.
we storm and we rescue everybody, or even the real life one where Tom Hanks is the captain of the patrol boat or the shipping vessel
Yeah,
in
Captain Roberts.
something like that. Yeah. We get this false sense that American military can just storm in there and take it, and all things work out, and we kiss at the end. I don't know,
Right.
but
Right. The idea of American exceptionalism.
Yeah.
That SEAL Team 6 is going to sweep in and do their thing.
and they did. I mean, when you think about what happened to Bin Laden, they did
I guess
sweep in.
right.
They
Exactly.
took
Well,
his
and
shit out. But
did you see the interview, the movie, The Interview, with
that's the one with James Franklin and
James Franco and Seth
Franco
Rogen,
and
where
Seth
they
Rogen,
interview Kim Jong Un in North Korea?
the one that
and-
almost brought down a movie studio because
Right, exactly. North Korea hacked Sony out of anger of it, released a bunch of salaries, all that stuff.
and storylines and stuff. Yeah.
Yep. Now, what's crazy though is that in that movie, and I'm going to give some spoilers here. The premise of the movie is that James Franco's character, Dave Skylark, is an idiot who has a very popular television show, a talk show. And his show is watched by the other idiot, Kim Jong Un, who they score an interview with Kim Jong Un in North Korea. At which point in time, the CIA says, "You've got an opportunity here. We want you to assassinate Kim Jong Un." And so I get why North Korea was a little unhappy about that.
Yeah.
But
oh yeah. I mean, it actually that's the premise of it was actually a true thing. It was what led. It was part of a domino that fell before 9/11, in that the Taliban had taken out the leader of the Northern Command, or I can't remember exactly what they were, but the one of the rivals for the Taliban in
Northern Alliance.
Northern Alliance, yeah.
Yeah, the people who
they set up an interview with a either a bomb or a gun inside the camera that killed the guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was how that story came about. But
yeah, so they had this vision where Dave Skylark, who's an idiot, says, "Well, so then I'm just going to walk in there and like blaze and shoot a cap in his ass, and then SEAL Team 6 will come in and rescue me." And the CIA people are like, "It doesn't work like that." But I think a lot of Americans wish that it would.
Yeah.
Back to Carter. Carter served in the Navy. He was
nuclear
engineer.
submarine.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So he actually had a strong science background. Somebody pointed out, Craig pointed out, that Carter did indeed create the Department of Education,
Yes.
which was interesting because he was then roundly criticized by several Democrats, including Governor Moonbeam,
Yep, Jerry Brown,
who at the time was dating Linda Ronstadt, who still haunts my fantasies. It's interesting. Carter created the Department of Education because of all the other things that we talked about being his good traits. He wanted to do good things and stand by people, and he believed that government was a tool for doing that. Based on his understanding of how the world worked, he didn't do anything bad or evil, which makes him very different from many other presidents who compromised principles along the way.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, he also kind of sealed his fate when he did that whole economic malaise speech. I mean, that kind of sealed him economically. I think a lot of he was kind of the victim of a lot of different forces internationally when it came to like blockades, gas lines, things like that that really hit the economy, stagflation.
Well, and the American power was at its nadir.
Yeah,
My New Year's resolution is to use nadir and zenith more in sentences.
nadir.
Um, the We just come out of Watergate. We
Yep.
have a president who was not elected to a federal office, but who assumed the power, who widely is regarded as an idiot, falls downstairs, etc. And somehow he bubbles his way barely through the primary, and then Carter beats him.
Yep.
But that, first of all, Carter's race was pretty interesting too, right? His primary race, he runs against Ted Kennedy, and it's a pretty close race. Carter ends up winning. Joe, you gonna say something there?
I was just going to say that even before that, Carter jumped on running, I think something like 2 years before the primary. He was doing a lot of his own traveling, grassroots, knock campaigning, trying to get as much traction as he could. And he was extremely successful then going into the primaries. A lot of people, I think, forget that.
Yeah, yeah, he did get a head start, and I think it kind of set the tone for a lot of players now are probably already starting their itineraries for Iowa and New Hampshire and early primary states for 2028. God help us all. But yeah, I mean, again, but you've got to start talking about Jimmy Carter's legacy after leaving the White House, where the Carter Center uh, it had two really huge. It has a ton of different things that it did, but one was peace treaties and negotiation for peace around the world, and two, election monitoring. They provide election monitors to many of developing world countries as they transition to democracy, especially in the when the Soviets collapsed and you have all these new democracies burgeoning throughout the world. The Carter Center was there monitoring elections, making sure they were free and fair, and pointing out when they weren't. Um, and then, of course, his humanitarian work with Habitat for Humanity, building just tons of houses for people throughout the country, making it a very successful charitable foundation. And it's one thing for someone to give a bunch of money, like an Elon Musk could dump a ton of money into a charity.
Yeah.
Um,
Carter
he,
went out there and built those houses.
yeah, the sweat equity. He was very big on the sweat equity
Yeah.
aspect of Habitat for Humanity.
Well,
And
one of the things that I always liked about Habitat Humanity, in addition to the fact that the people went out there and built the houses, is that they didn't give those houses away. They gave people low interest loans, but they made them actually buy the houses because they're working on this fundamental principle that we as sort of Adam Smith disciples agree with, that something that you get for free is literally worthless. It has no worth. And so you having to pay for that house makes it a bigger deal. And that's why one of the things I always loved about Habitat for Humanity is that it's a charity, but it's a charity that expects people to work to receive benefits.
yeah,
It's a hand up instead of a handout.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be the lasting legacy of Jimmy Carter, and the fact that while his presidency was looked upon as somewhat of a failure, the fact that he there were good things when it came to deregulation and things like that, but his service after being president, where most of the presidents we see kind of disappear into giving speeches and keeping a rather low profile. He was out there and doing good in the world, and the world is lesser for Jimmy Carter leaving the earth today. So
Yeah, his example will live on for a long time.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, so let's get into the second half of the year. So everything from July on, we talked about a little bit about this last week, where the first big news story of the second half of the year was the granting of presidential powers. Supreme Court decision basically saying that anything a president does and deems an official act is the only break that they have is essentially being impeached.
I mean,
And
it's an interesting position
it is.
because the argument is, right, Congress can impeach the president. And so should a president worry that he can't do something in the best interest of the country because a later administration might find him. It comes down to the basic idea of is the Justice Department wielded as a tool against political enemies? Will it ever be wielded as a tool against political enemies? And as crazy as it sounds, Trump has just protected Joe Biden because of this case. The House didn't impeach Biden at all.
No.
The House is not going to impeach Donald Trump in the next 2 years. But who knows what the House might look like in 2 years?
Yeah.
But
they're never going to get to the, it's not going to be like the post-Watergate House and Senate,
right,
where they have an impeachable majority in the Senate. So
and yes, I would say that's almost certainly true. What's interesting is we come back to Carter's opponent. Probably the smartest thing that Ford did was to pardon Richard Nixon for all things because it allowed the country to move on.
it did.
When it was clear. I mean, in retrospect, right?
It cost him the White House. I mean, it really did.
Yeah, Ford really was an idiot.
Ford was ineffective, but yeah, that
right.
He could have been a caretaker.
Maybe. I mean, I think that no matter what, post Nixon, the Republicans were going to lose that round.
Sure,
it would be pretty impressive for them to hold the White House after having the president actually impeached or resigned, as the case may be. I mean, he wasn't impeached. It should be pointed out.
Yes.
They never got that far.
Yeah, it was very close.
But it would have happened, right?
Yeah.
But of course, Clinton and Trump were impeached. And so,
I think impeachment now has such a low bar.
It's ridiculous.
Sad.
The conviction part is the high bar, but
Yes.
the low bar is just, you get 50% in the House saying that he should be impeached on what articles. It's going to get through.
Yep. And so the Supreme Court's decision about liability is an interesting one because should a president be paralyzed in office, worried that his political enemies will use a Justice Department against him? And I mean,
it's hard to say because the president picks the Justice Department. I mean, he picks the head of the Justice Department.
I mean, 4 years later, after you lose.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Here's the thing: if the president commits a state crime, the Supreme Court hasn't exonerated him from that.
No, I mean he's still on the hook for the New York crimes that we're still waiting for sentencing on if that happens.
Yep. And so what we're talking about is, federal crimes. And I mean, it's not even clear what federal crimes we're really talking about here, right? I mean, are they talking about coming back with insurrection now? Or, I would make an argument. You could say that, Kamala Harris violated her oath to defend the Constitution by not invoking the 25th Amendment and removing Joe Biden from office.
Sure. I mean, yeah, you can make that.
But would you prosecute her for that?
No.
Exactly. And so,
again, the impeachable standard is high crimes and misdemeanors. Like,
right.
Does that reach a high crime? And that, again, for an impeachment, that is not that is up to Congress to make that determination. But I don't know, man. I think this is going to blow up on us at some point, and I think the near future resident of the White House is well poised to take advantage of this.
I mean,
Especially if it becomes clear that, let's say we get closer to 2026 and it looks like Trump is going to take a taint punching at the polls.
yeah,
He could determine things are official acts. I mean, hell, Joe Biden could determine that assassinating Trump right now would be an official act,
right.
and he wouldn't get convicted by a Democratic Senate. I will tell you that right now.
Well, except that it would still be murder.
It's still murder, but again, the Supreme Court decision says that the only ones that can make that ruling are the Congress through an impeachment, and the Senate through a conviction. That I don't know that they can refer that to the Department of Justice to skip that whole process and just say the Department of Justice prosecutes it.
Well, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't think that, but there are a lot of federal murder statutes out there. It's the sort of thing that is a local crime.
Does assassination meet the high crimes and misdemeanors? Absolutely.
Sure, absolutely. So,
but again, it's yes. Do I think the Republican House convicts or indicts Biden on an assassination? Yes, absolutely. Do I think that they cobble together enough votes in the Senate to convict him? No, absolutely not. And what they're saying is that from there, that is the end of the line. There's no, they've deemed it an official act, and that the Senate, by not convicting him, essentially agrees.
Yeah, I guess you have to weigh. There's two risks, right? One is the risk of an out of control president while he's in office. The other is the risk of the out of control president vindictively going after his predecessors.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah. They're. I don't like either. I don't like where this is going.
Right.
We purposely did not have a king after winning the revolution and Continental Congress.
What was the specific element where they said, the president can't be charged with this because he did it while he was in office?
An official act.
Right. But I mean, there was a case that they brought. They said, they want to charge him for this. And he said, you can't charge me for that because
it was not the.
I can't think of
was it
exactly.
The documents?
Maybe it's the documents case.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting question because we sort of get into that space of, is Trump the first president?
It might have been with some of the election interference stuff.
Is Trump the first president to mishandle documents?
Well, I mean, they found documents in Biden's garage, so
exactly.
I mean,
Hillary Clinton's emails.
Yeah.
Right.
All that president, though.
And but the argument is that, I mean, the argument from the other side is that Trump already suffered from this malicious prosecution. Things that other candidates, if you went back and looked at them, hadn't done. What was the thing that we look at and we say, so bad? Now,
do you think he suffered, though?
Here's what I think. I actually do think that there should be an incredible.
What was the question there, Dave?
Do you think Trump actually suffered? Like, he was still shitting on his golden toilet. So
yeah, no, I don't think so.
I don't think he's ever suffered.
But I actually do think that it's a mistake. I think that it should be that the president can be tried for anything.
Yes.
Because that's where it's supposed to work.
We see, I mean, what we saw in Italy, we've seen in Israel too. People using the fact that they are in a position of power to delay prosecution for things, like Silvio Berlusconi for years kept running for Italian prime minister because The moment he stopped being Italian prime minister, he would go to jail. Benjamin Netanyahu is repeatedly been under, charges for taking bribes and things like that.
Yeah.
He's used the election system to keep himself out of jail in Israel. So, I mean, I think that's what we're doing here is that we're going to have, presidents people trying to keep themselves out of prosecution, either by being a current president or former president and clouding.
Well, but now they don't have to do that because they don't have to stay in office because
Yeah.
they're exempted.
They're exempted. They can declare anything they do in office an official act.
Right.
It's so sad.
It
just seems like Congress has certain constitutional duties, and they've basically said, we're just not going to do them. We're just going to allow the president.
They have abdicated so many other,
So
many other duties.
I find it interesting how, at least since the 70s, there's been many different times where presidents have appointed new justices. And you think, oh, okay, these are their buddies, or they're going to vote that president's way. And surprisingly, they don't go the way that president who nominated them for the position thought they would. That's kind of refreshing. I like the fact that they're indeed looking at their job and saying, this is what we have to do constitutionally. And anything less than that, we're usurping our duties. Now, I don't know how close we are to them bagging that. I like to think the Supreme Court is still going to sit back and say, this is what we got to do. This is the decisions that have to be made. This, whether they agree or not, they're still going to take their votes, but it's got to be constitutional in every one of their eyes.
So
I like the word usurp. That's such a good word.
I'm reading the ACLU's bit on this. And what they say is that the rule that the president is given presumptively immune from criminal liabilities for his official acts and absolutely immune for some core acts. However, the president isn't the one who gets to determine what is an official act. That goes before court. And so the court 63 freed presidents to use their official powers to engage in criminal acts substantially free of accountability. They granted Trump use of the Justice Department immunity for fraudulent purposes. It sent back to the lower courts to determine which actions Trump was charged with were official acts or personal acts, and whether the government can rebut the presumption that the president can say this is an official act and deem it and say that it is.
I mean, he's got the fact that he's got 6 friendly justices on the Supreme Court.
Sure,
at this point,
sure,
so
and
possibly more.
Right,
going in the next couple of years.
It seems very likely to me that he's going to replace at least one more justice. Not to mention the fact there's got to be huge pressure on Clarence Thomas to step down at this point in time.
Sure. Right? Yeah, I mean they've got to get rid of him. He's a albatross on the rest of the court.
I mean, he's terrible in and of itself. He's also old, right? I mean, he is a cheeseburger away from a quadruple bypass,
or a very friendly.
Well, seriously, isn't Trump though too?
This is true.
I at this point in time, I believe he may be the undead.
Gosh, all this time I thought it was Nancy Pelosi.
Well, I mean, let's go further into July, and Donald Trump gives a speech in front of at Butler County, Pennsylvania, and a disturbed young man on top of a building, got 2 shots off at him, one grazing his ear. And later when we do the quiz, you'll actually see a picture of the famous picture of Donald Trump after the shooting. The kid is killed. Well, he's like a 19-year-old kid.
Right.
But really shakes up the race. I mean, the race at this point is already reeling because of the absolute inept debate performance of Joe Biden, and Donald Trump is starting to take a solid lead.
Yeah, and I read, first of all, I read a great article, and I do believe that there's a correlation between them, but talking about the fact that that's actually what happened. It was the debate performance. It was so terrible that everybody who watched it, I happened to be with Chase Oliver at the time. He was doing interviews in DC. I was his body person going around DC. And we watched it together and we couldn't believe it. I mean,
Oh yeah,
you saw it. It was
we did
unbelievable.
a live show. AJ and I did the live show, and I was just stunned the entire night.
And all of America felt that way. And not just that, there were two parts about it. First, everybody saw the emperor has no clothes. Secondly, there was a core that circled the wagons and said, that's not what you saw. You saw something else. And that was the core of the Democratic Party. And when they did that, there was no
Yeah.
chance of recovery. At that point in time, the Democrats seemed like such liars that they couldn't do anything else they could possibly recover from. And that's where it went wrong. The best analysis I saw from it was a hardcore Democrat, Van Johnson. You might remember from
Yep.
a
He's
variety
on
of different
CNN.
things.
Yeah.
And Van is now freed from political constraints, and so he can generally speak his mind. And he said, it's what happened. What happens in the Democratic Party is, some old white guy makes a huge mess and expects a black woman to clean it up. And there's something to that.
Yeah.
Biden fucked it. He fucked the country. And if he had stepped away earlier, it could have
If
been
the
much better.
Democrats had had an actual primary, I mean, yeah, I get it. You don't generally primary a sitting president. But in that
But
case, I
they
mean, Joe
knew.
Biden had already said that, he would thought about being a one-term president.
Yeah.
It's the hubris of politicians in that they think that no one can replace what they do. There's 330 million people in this country. You are not the only mind that can be president of the United States.
I mean, Joe Biden could not have passed a test to be a school bus driver,
Yeah. Oh, I know.
right?
Yeah.
I kept on saying it was time to take Grandpa's keys. Like
Yeah.
that's where we got to as a nation, and we saw it on the debate stage, and then we saw it those next few
And,
weeks where he went into hiding and
and the
actually got
thing,
COVID too.
the thing is that most of us who were like sort of regular observers had been watching and saying, Biden looks terrible. I mean, like long before the debate, we're like,
Oh
he
yeah,
looks so infirmed, right?
didn't he say
You see
"God
him,
save the king" or something like that at one point?
he struggled up and down the stairs, just all sorts of stuff. And, and let's not even talk about the fact that he used to do all this really creepy stuff too. And his staff couldn't get him to stop doing it. They couldn't get him to stop sniffing people's hair,
Well,
holding people. And the end,
even his own
they had-
daughter commented in her book about him.
yeah. In the end, they had to stop giving him opportunities to do that because it was the only way to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all that being said, as we cycle back around, so here is the scenario where it becomes apparent. I mean, I think it became apparent to everybody
Yes.
after the first debate,
Corn pop.
Trump's going to win. What'd you say?
Jana says corn pop.
Yeah. It becomes apparent that Trump is going to win. And so that makes some Democrats go crazy.
Yeah.
And they don't realize, right, they don't put the blame in any appropriate place. But that's where this one guy gets this crazy idea that he's going to kill the president.
Yeah.
And so a whole bunch of things go wrong that day.
Well, that guy was driven by, it wasn't, I don't think he was afraid that Donald Trump would become president. I think, I saw enough of his, before they took down all of his Facebook stuff, he was a very big anti-Jeffrey Epstein. Like that was his cause celeb. And of all the people that have had pictures taken with Jeffrey Epstein and all the rumors of who's been on his airline, only one celebrity has had multiple, and that was Donald Trump.
Right.
And I think he was kind of this. I think that was his motivation, was to be an avenger for the kid. Sorry about that. For the kids.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't for sure. There wasn't a lot of explanation about what happened, and I
find
agree
it-
with you.
I find it amazing they still haven't released or prosecuted anybody related to Epstein. It's sad. Outside of
Except for Ghislaine Maxwell.
except
Yeah.
Maxwell,
I'm
Yeah,
surprised
no,
she's still alive.
if she
It
is.
is.
That's true.
It is pretty crazy. I we go into that part of it too, because I think we're seeing, in many ways, the Sean Combs thing
Yeah.
is on par with Epstein.
Yeah.
So, but to cycle back around to the guy who shot Trump, the one thing that went right was the counter snipers were unbelievable. Unbelievable, right?
I mean, the dude was prone on top of a roof. I don't know how good of an angle they had on shooting him down, but they took him down pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, before he got a third shot off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty amazing. Then, another thing about it, that then, in contrast to the previous debate performance by Biden, where he looks insane, unhinged, confused, lost, wondering where he left his teeth,
Yeah.
Donald Trump comes up and he's fighting, right?
Yeah, he's fist in the
Fight,
air and
fight,
yeah,
and he tells all that
like a
stuff.
blood on his face, fist in the air. I mean, that was a
Mhm.
pivotal moment of the election. I think that's what really
Yeah.
starts to be the conversation that drives Biden out of the race.
Yeah, and yeah, if I could possibly believe that it was staged, I would, because it couldn't have been a more perfect event.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and I mean that because, right, the best thing that could have happened, if the bullet completely misses him, you don't get the same photo op, and if it's an inch to the left, he's dead.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, people talk about it being faked, but he had his head. He was.
yep, he was doing
He was
what
like this, and then he
looking over-
twitched it like this, and the bullet sniped his ear. Like
Hard to
not
imagine.
even a quarter, like an eighth of a second later. I'm like
It
he's
is
like
hard to
this.
imagine
It's hitting
that
the
was
back
staged.
of his head.
Yep.
I mean, that was an attempt, and I'd like to throw in, we, of course, they were shots that rang out, more than one. But let's face it, there should be a single bullet theory going here that went down and orbited Pluto and came back and went through his ear. But, I haven't heard it talked about nearly enough.
It's pretty crazy. There was a guy who was
Okay.
killed.
Yes,
fireman
that is
from
sad.
Pennsylvania.
That's so sad.
And then let's talk about the failures on the other side. People knew he was there. They knew the shooter was there for like 45 minutes.
Yep.
Just walking around. Yeah.
They didn't secure, the Secret Service didn't secure the building. They didn't have drone coverage overhead. People saw the guy up on the roof and they're like, hey, there's a guy up on the roof.
Oh yeah, there are people like, hey, trying to get the
Exactly.
police's attention. They just went to bed.
So, on the one hand, I say that I want to believe in this crazy conspiracy that it was, perfectly organized by the Republicans so that Trump could have this magical moment. On the other hand, I want to believe it was organized by the Democrats so somebody could kill Trump. It's mind-boggling that this could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think we the Secret Service is very hyper vigilant when it comes to presidential protection. I think it gets to a point in time that something has not happened in so long that I think everyone's collective guard goes down. I don't know why this election, because later on the election cycle, there's another guy that tries to get at Trump at his own golf
That was a
course,
golf
and
course. Yep.
that was kind of a weird one. Like, apparently got shot at like 5 times, and they didn't hit him at all from a few feet away.
Stormtroopers.
Just yeah, exactly.
I do think, I sadly think this is probably not the end of it.
Oh, I don't. And
I think
God
that
help us if
there are
and
now. What's interesting about it too is that, again, to sort of play a little bit of devil's advocate. Well, this is not even devil's advocate here. There was a lot of extremist language used. We have to do anything we can to stop Donald Trump. Okay, Trump is Hitler. Trump is fascism. Trump is all of these things. And
Trump feeds into it.
yeah,
He embraces it.
look, he couldn't be a bigger asshole, right? He really couldn't. But he is democratically elected. He didn't steal the election, and he has overwhelming support. And in places, he has overwhelming support among traditional Democratic voters, right?
Yep.
The working class overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
The only group, we talked about, I can't remember, it was on last week, I think we talked about it. The only group that stuck with Biden, that he pulled the same number of, was Jewish voters.
Yeah.
Every other demographic, white men, black women, there's a great debate done by
The Amish, yeah.
the Amish, exactly right. There was a great debate where they did two impersonators. It was Bernie Sanders.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
He says, "We're doing very well in some key demographics. Women who braid their armpit hair, we're pulling 85%.
Oh God.
So I mean that's that cycle that Trump is crushing with those voters, and the elite intelligentsia, people who are out of touch, people who think Joe Biden could win, people who thought Joe Biden could win, knowing the state that he was in December of 2023, when they really could have done something about it and said, you know what, open it up, have a primary.
Yeah.
Those people were the ones who started to say, well, we just have to pull out all the stops. And we have to say that Trump is the greatest threat to America, that he is the greatest threat to all these things, that Trump is the boogeyman. And in a rational world, we have to ask ourselves, how can we think somebody is the boogeyman and so many people say, no, that's not right? That is propaganda. Now, are all these people getting the wool pulled over their eyes? Are we being deceived? Part of critical thinking is admitting the fact that we can be wrong. And so in a critical analysis of our position, is it possible that we could be wrong, that Trump is not the greatest threat to democracy, to the American system, that we've ever seen? I don't know.
I mean, I think we look at things that he did in first term,
right?
Especially leaving the office, that kind of spells out.
Sure.
And his statements throughout the campaign. Now, we know that he talks out of both sides of his mouth,
yep.
But statements he's made, the his actions leaving the White House do leave you cause for concern. And Trump did do better in several key demographics. It wasn't like he won the African American vote.
No.
He got like 20% of the African American vote, which is, when you think about when Obama won, it was like 96-4.
Right.
The African American vote went heavily to Obama, and then for Biden it was 90%. So it was an increase of 10%, which is significant in a country that is so close.
Well, right, but then how could Kamala Harris do worse among black voters than crackety ass cracker Joe Biden?
You raise
I
a
don't
good
know.
point, though.
And they always said that Trump or that Biden was Obama's grandfather. Like that was like the point that they
Well,
made. Like I don't get this, but
I mean, but
y'all
wait,
rock on that.
do we remember when Biden makes an offensive statement
Oh God, yes,
about Obama? He says, "I
yeah.
like him because he's so clean and so well spoken."
Hmm.
I mean, Jesus
I mean, Biden
Christ!
was a gaffe machine. Like I mean,
It
Well,
was
but
Chris Rock put it best. He's like, "What's the thing that people say about?" This is back when Colin Powell was being. He says, "What's the thing that people say about Colin Powell?" Right? What's the thing that white people say? They say he's so well spoken. So well spoken is an insult. That's something
Mhm.
that you say about uh, uh, Chris Rock's phrasing. That's something you say about a mentally retarded person, right? You don't say he's so well spoken about a person who's going to be president. Of course, that person would be. So when people tell you Colin Powell's so well spoken, they're actually insulting him.
yes. Like
Uh,
Joe, go ahead.
I was going to say, Dan, you raised a great point. Maybe we do need to look in the mirror and analyze our own thoughts and accusations. Maybe Trump isn't, how did you put it? The worst thing that
the
came.
Antichrist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or the reason everything's going to go to hell in a handbag. But I guess my point is, all right, so it maybe perhaps he's surrounded by others that are more evil. Perhaps he can be manipulated
Yeah.
to these lesser ends. Then what difference does it make? He is the catalyst to make all these things unravel. And it's tough to look at the man and say, oh, we're going to have all this good come from his position. I'm not going to say leadership because that'd be a very, very loose use of the
Yeah.
word.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a perfectly fair statement. And what Dave said as well about is it an insurrection at the end? Did Trump dance a fine line to incite an insurrection without actually inciting an insurrection? I
I
believe
would
that
say
he
yes.
did. I believe he
I
knew
would
what
say
he
yes.
was doing.
Oh yeah.
Uh, uh, but I also believe innocent until proven guilty. I don't know why Merrick Garland didn't bring those charges.
Exactly. I mean, that was the absolute miscarriage of justice here is that Merrick Garland sat on his hands for 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
3 years, and
and,
then tried to play makeup during the
well, and
last year.
even if they couldn't win, okay, and maybe they couldn't win, right? Maybe Trump played it so cagey that there is no
Yeah.
smoking gun.
Mhm.
Having the trial would have been pretty important, I think,
Yes.
because I think that you could show all the stuff that happened and say, okay, maybe you didn't cross the line, but you did all these things and you talked with the Proud Boys and you told them to stand by and be ready.
Mhm.
And
Preponderance of evidence.
yeah, exactly. Telling people to stand by and be ready, people who are, essentially an armed militia, that's not a non-military statement.
Correct.
Yeah.
And let's face
Yeah.
it, while bringing those charges and investigating and even taking someone to trial, they did a lot more for a lot less to Bill
Yeah,
Clinton.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was a complete mistake to not do that because again, also you know, they have the House. And so they have a lot of power and they just
I
squandered
mean,
it all.
the house was kind of a mess, but
Mm.
um, so we get in after the gunshot, Trump starts to take a commanding lead in the polls. Democrats panic, and to compound issues, Joe Biden gets COVID, and that weekend he decides to step back and not run for president, despite being a month out from the convention.
Right.
He steps back, and immediately, Kamala Harris steps up, and the entire path clears for her. I don't know
Well,
what levels of
yeah.
pressure happened. I mean, there were rumors that other people were considering it, but it really just, by the end of the weekend, it was clear that Kamala Harris was going to be the presidential nominee for the Democrats. There was no, I mean, I was begging for an open convention. You know, the
Yeah, a
idea
floor
that the
fight.
convention picks it. Yeah, floor
It
fight.
needed to be 1968 all over again.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. But this is what happens when you get political types wanting to control the narrative. And the way to control the narrative was to clear everyone out, say this is our horse, and we're going with Kamala Harris, and we're gonna ride her to the finish line. And for a while it seemed like a decent pick. I mean, she turned around the momentum in the race and felt like that she was leading. I don't know how true it was, but she made the. I think if Joe Biden stayed in the race, it would have been just a monumental loss.
Good
It
bloodbath.
would, because it was so apparent that the Democratic Party was lying. They
Yeah,
were lying about Biden's competency.
Yes.
Although they were.
Today on the Drudge Report, there was a story that Biden has regrets and that Biden thinks that he should have stayed in the race. Like,
Oh my God!
that is the lesson you should not be drawing from what happened in July. No.
Think about
the fact.
Like Dan said earlier, their actions, the Democrats' actions, made themselves look like such absolute liars that we could see through. Was making this fraud, con man, liar look like a better choice. Talk about a backfire.
Right. I mean, first of all, you're right. I saw Biden talking about that, and he's talking about running again in 2028. I'm just kidding. I made that up.
Jesus Christ is like, what? Right. No.
Right.
From the crypt keeper.
Exactly. It was such.
He does kind of look like Joe Biden. If Joe Biden dies and spends a few years, he would look like the crypt keeper, I think.
Yeah. There was, there's been a lot of talk though that there was a very deliberate organization, Donna Brazile and a few other people, to make sure that Kamala did get the nomination.
Yeah.
And they talked about the fact that, there's a bunch of text messages that become public that it was her turn, that she had earned the right to run unopposed.
Which is the worst.
Exactly.
That was what
Hillary,
Bob Dole.
The same thing with Hillary.
Well, it was Bob Dole in '96. That was the reasoning why they went with Dole, was that it was his turn to run for president for the Republicans, and probably would have done it a lot better with somebody like a Lamar Alexander, or at that
Right.
point. But
Bob Dole, who ran for vice president in '76.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a guy whose like ship had sailed and hit an iceberg.
Yeah.
And it was crazy, the Dole, and
especially against a vigorous guy like Clinton, even though whatever happened to Clinton in the second term.
Well,
it was such a bad juxtaposition.
Well, while Dole was 76, wasn't Biden 88? But when they caught him for plagiarism,
No, but Dole was not 76 when he ran in 92, 94, 96. He was.
Yeah, he got the nomination then.
But he was older. I mean, he was
right.
I
mean, the only thing about
in 76, his hat was in the ring.
Yeah, no, right. He started off running for president and then became Ford's running mate. But the only thing that was interesting about it is that, I mean, in '96, Dole gets up there and he runs for office, and he just looks so old, so wooden, so stiff, that he gets the Viagra campaign. So
he did get the Viagra campaign. I remember him and Libby Dole on CNN talking about how it rejuvenated the bedroom, and I'm like, I don't want just bad mental images. Mental images.
And that's the other thing about it too, is that we did get denied Libby Dole, who would have been an amazing candidate.
Sure.
Anyway.
But everything you just said, it makes me think, isn't it sad when you turn it on the TV and you see someone you love and adore for years, like Joe Namath, and what? You're advertising reverse mortgages? No. It just kind of takes all the luster off.
Well, Joe drunkenly hitting on Susie Colbert on the sideline.
Susie Colbert, yeah.
I want to kiss you.
I want to kiss you.
She's a birdie.
She handled that so well, I have to say.
She did.
But And I don't know if Joe stopped drinking after that, but
I think he did go into rehab after that.
yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah. Anyway,
Incidentally, go ahead.
so we go through. Actually, before the conventions, we have the Summer Olympics in Paris.
Yep,
Um,
filled with
where
controversy.
Yeah, it was filled with controversy. I mean, it was a return to prominence of American gymnastics, with Simone Biles being just the absolute goddess of gymnastics.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean,
U.S. women's rugby sevens wins an amazing bronze. People, if you haven't seen
absolutely.
that bronze medal game, you need to watch it against
Yeah,
Australia. Fun. Women's gold soccer, um, men's gold in boxing and basketball, and all the thing.
oh yeah,
But
the
it
boxing
can,
controversy with the Algerian fighter,
yeah,
where they accuse her of being a man,
yeah,
and it was not true. Um, yeah, it was that was horrible. I'm glad that glad she won. Like
yeah. It's interesting. It's two things. I mean, first of all, there's the controversy about the opening ceremony, which had 100% more penis than any previous opening ceremony. I mean, the bar's a little low, but uh, I, I think that they sort of set the stage for that sort of thing.
yeah,
And so then, yeah, we get this controversy. This woman who has fought for years and always competed as a woman, uh, raised as a woman, competed as female. There's really no doubt that Khan, Emaine, I can't remember her name now.
Iman
There's a KH in there
Khalif,
somewhere. Khalif.
Iman Khalif.
Uh, she had no accusations against her except from the discredited World Boxing Association,
Yes,
right? Who,
and Russians essentially.
right, exactly. The Russians who lost the championship essentially manufactured this claim that they lost the manufacturer, lost the thing because uh, she was a man, and that's why she was able to beat all these Russians. And 4 years ago at the Olympics, she did not win the gold medal. She was beaten by one of the greatest Irish fighters of all time, whose name temporarily eludes me. But so clearly not unbeatable. And then people jumped on it immediately with who's the French fighter who was knocked out in the first round and said, "I've never been hit so hard." And she started crying and
But no,
said
it was
there was an
Italian fighter. It was an Italian
Italian.
fighter that got yeah.
Surrender culture is surrender culture. Sorry, this is my World War II jokes there. Um, the
Yeah, she gives
yeah,
up, and she was knocked down, but she refused to come out for the second round. I think it was the story with her,
right.
and then immediately went to the press about you know with the controversy about the WBA calling her or calling into question her gender.
Yeah, and let's point out that to this day, that test has never been released. Right, the test that the it's FBA, right, Federation of Boxing. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, I'm not
World Boxing
sure.
Association. That test has never been released, and it's unclear what it was. It's pretty clear that it was not a genetic test.
IBA,
IBA.
International
Okay.
Boxing Association. Yeah.
So it's not a genetic test. There's a question, maybe it's a testosterone level blood draw, something like that. But there's all sorts of other reasons you would have other tests, and the Olympics has their own anti-doping regimen where they test people for doping as well. And Emain Khalif passes all of those tests. So the question is, uh, you know, how much is women's sports going to be tainted by this? Is every time a woman is competitive, is she going to be accused of being a man?
Yeah.
And then, what is the larger issue, and the one that people haven't talked about yet, which is there a rationale from saying that men shouldn't compete in women's sports? And I think that there is a pretty strong rationale for that. This didn't come anywhere near to that level, though. And so, where we're going to go with what's happening, there's this new, the enhanced games. The people who work with Joe Kennedy.
Drug Olympics.
Yeah, exactly.
Every time I think about the enhanced games, I think about the drug Olympics from Saturday Night Live. Well, the dude tries to lift the thing up and it rips his arms out.
Exactly. But that's essentially where they're going. They're taking, and it is, you see sprinters who are 3 years past their prime, then becoming enhanced and approaching world record times. And so they're offering $1 million for anybody who can set the world record in the 100-meter dash. No drug tests around. And there's like 12 other events that they're offering $1 million for somebody to set the thing. Those are completely open events.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no gender requirement one way or the other. Everybody competes in the same event. Men, women, whatever you would care to classify yourself as. So we have that idea of one open event. Is there a rationale for having a separate women's sporting category? I think
it would be interesting to see if you combine certain sports like gymnastics. You put men and women up in gymnastics, and it becomes more of a question of lines and artistry versus raw power.
Yeah. Well, because, they do have intergender competitions, right? You play doubles in tennis. There is the 4x100 or 4x400.
Yeah, they
intergender relay.
Swimming relays as well.
I think that there's some sports where there is no gender classification. I think, is it guns and archery?
No, they do have like women's biathlon, the Winter Olympics. It's a separate event,
right? Well, the biathlon. I think there's some
equestrian, maybe equestrian.
Google it though.
Yeah, but yeah, the Olympics were okay. I was trying to think of singular moments from the Olympics. Janice put in there the Celine Dion singing from the Eiffel Tower. The opening ceremonies was quite remarkable. It was kind of a reemergence of Celine Dion this year. She actually was at the NHL draft a month and a half before, reading off I believe, was it the Montreal Canadiens pick? She's been kind of laying low for a while because of her. She had like a facial paralysis issue, I believe.
Right. Yeah, I know she was pretty serious.
Yeah, but she's come out a few times and performed at the opening ceremonies. That was great. The Olympics. I always joke that for a lot of people, politics is like the Olympics. It comes around every 4 years. You talk about it for a couple of weeks, and then everybody goes back to their lives.
Right.
The presidential election's kind of that way, although the presidential election has been stealing more and more of our time as we
go there along. Were 20 mixed gender events at the Olympics.
Nice.
The mixed relay. There's a judo mixed event. Shooting traps is mixed.
Kicking ass together. That's
exactly.
I'm down with that.
Yeah.
Everybody was kung fu fighting.
Exactly.
There's all sorts of things that I've never been a fan of the Olympic event curling. I think it's called that.
Curling.
Wow.
You don't like curling?
Not at all. But you can see it being co-ed. That wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, they do have co-ed curling. And I've got a soft spot in my heart for the ladies of curling. Like I used to have this. The ladies of curling did a nude calendar once, and it was very nice. I will say that right now.
It was
Well,
toe curling.
yeah,
It was toe
I
curling.
can
Yes.
imagine it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I,
Basically, every woman type that you like is participating in curl. I'll just
Yeah.
put it that way.
Cool.
yeah,
Cool.
it's yeah. I like watching curling. In certain
Women
places in the
screaming
north, certainly in
hard.
Massachusetts, it's not uncommon to find a curling place outdoors where there's stones just lying around, and you can shoot them back and forth and brush the ice and stuff like that. It's harder than you would think, but I
Yeah, I mean,
wouldn't
if
sit
you ever
around and watch it.
if you ever
Uh,
sit around with me and watch either volleyball or curling, then you probably have a worse opinion of me. But
right, but
I'll leave it at that.
but the last thing we have to say is that it's not for nothing that there is this gender controversy at the Olympics, and it feeds back into the American political scenario.
Yeah, I mean, the as we get closer towards the end of the year, and the end of the election, there are just out and out ads about
Yeah,
surgeries. Kamala Harris advocating for gender reassignment surgeries in prisons, and the tagline in some of the Trump ads was, she's for they them, he's for you. Um, which I thought was uh, wasn't going to sway me, but I thought was actually an effective tagline to draw people who are afraid of this, nefarious idea of a few people changing their genders.
right. Now, I have to say something about this. I'm going to send you a link. You can decide if you want to show it. But if anybody saw the ad with this person in it, um, Dave, you can pop it up.
Oh Lord, yes.
It's the most amazing story of all time. So, uh, this person who identifies as non-binary, nuclear official in the Biden administration, has been arrested and convicted 3 times of stealing people's luggage at
What?
the airport,
Why?
and then and the way they got busted was they were wearing a dress that they stole from a designer so this person who was in the they them ads in a red dress, and
No, stop it.
if anybody had seen this person, and
I stopped sharing.
it's just astonishing that it can happen 3 times. Sam Brinton is their name, and
Why?
it's just
Why?
it's just
I mean,
crazy. And so that's the thing about it, is that here we have the story that is
deception.
just insane, and it feeds into the controversy of, well, how is this person an official in the Biden administration? Because they were convicted 3 times of stealing people's uh, luggage at the airport. You can't explain it. It's
Yeah, I
inexplicable.
don't.
But the fact that they were busted because they stole somebody's dress and then wore it to an official event, and the person was actually, there's a designer who lived in Africa. She was back home in Africa, saw the event on television, and saw the dress that she had made.
That is just
Wow.
asinine.
Yeah, crazy.
That is. I mean, yeah. Don't do crime.
Yeah,
Stay on the straight and narrow, kids.
exactly.
All
Don't
right.
steal people's luggage.
So yeah, election night rolls around, and I think too a lot of
Pretty
pundits.
quickly.
Yeah, a lot of pundits surprised. We see Donald Trump taking an early lead and maintaining it, and across every battleground state, there were 7 battleground states. Donald Trump got out to early leads and maintained the leads throughout the night. Pennsylvania was one, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina. Donald Trump and Georgia. Donald Trump swept all
All the
7
swing states.
states, and won his second term in the White House, because joins Grover Cleveland as the only two non-consecutive term presidents. Will be taking the oath of office in late January, and yeah, that'll be interesting. I saw a lot of comments today about the fact that Jimmy Carter died today will allow Joe Biden to preside over his official state services, and that it's a good thing that it wasn't Donald Trump in charge of um, the state ceremonies for Jimmy Carter.
It's gonna
Um,
it's gonna be interesting to see too what's going to happen January 6th this year.
yeah, what's going to happen to a lot of these folks who were convicted on January 6th crimes? Is Trump going to come in, executive order, pardon them the first day? I mean, these are questions.
Again, here's the thing where Biden has just completely undermined himself. First of all, pardoning his son.
Yeah,
Okay, that. But then he pardoned some truly terrible people. Uh,
the
uh,
Catcher Kids
yeah, Casper
judge.
Kids judge in Pennsylvania. Um, and then it's just, I don't know.
I mean, I don't have a problem with them commuting all those
No,
federal death penalty cases.
because he just converted them from death to life in prison.
Life in prison,
That's
yeah.
fine. We all oppose the death penalty. I think even Donald Trump probably opposes the death
No,
penalty.
Donald Trump came out and said that he wants to ramp up the federal death penalty. So
Well, he did have the
he only has
what was
three
the
on
Central
there
Park
now.
Five. That
Yeah,
was Trump.
yeah,
Um, so I it- whatever. That it's crazy that there's a death penalty,
yep.
but we're not going to change that right now. Um,
Uh,
I am glad that Biden commuted the sentences of all but three. Right.
Tsarnaev, the
Yeah, Dzhokhar
Boscomar.
Tsarnaev, the Dylan Roof,
Yep.
and I can't remember the other one, but somebody equally terrible.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I'm glad. I wouldn't mind seeing all three of them spend the rest of their life in prison
Yeah,
as
no, I
well.
listen.
Like,
I am convinced beyond any shadow of a doubt that Dzhokhar Tsarnaev did it. Right. There
yeah,
is videotape of him putting the bomb right next to little Ricky.
a little kid. Yeah.
Yeah, and Martin Richards, Martin Richards. I can't remember front person, but yeah, it's terrible. But I still wouldn't give the state the power of killing people,
No.
just because I've seen too many cases where the state is
Wrong.
falsifying evidence.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Literally.
There's bad pressure to get easy convictions
What?
on
Oh,
capital crimes. Now, I think federal crimes are a lot harder to get that death penalty conviction, but still, I don't
I,
like
I'm.
the
I think
state
you're
having
being.
that power.
I think you're being generous there. I think that there are times that the government conspires to frame people and
Yes.
torture
Oh
people
yeah,
to silence
yeah.
them.
Absolutely.
So you can't have a death penalty. But now in that space, we have you know Trump coming in, and there are some very bad people in prison for what happened on January 6th, who committed some really heinous crimes. I
Yeah.
I I hope he is not going to pardon them. I can't imagine that.
I think he will. I think he's put himself on the hook for doing it, and there's been enough controversy the last couple weeks about stuff going on in his new administration. H1 visa, H1B visa
Right,
controversy with Elon Musk and his folks.
Steve Bannon. Yeah,
Um, the I think he's going to keep his promise on immigration. I think there's going to be some really bad shit going down with immigration. I think that the January 6th protesters are going to get released, and
that would be pretty terrible.
it's going to be awful. But um, before we hit the quiz, we got a new year-ending quiz. So it'll go through stuff that's going on this year. But let's talk about sports champions this year. We had the NBA Finals. Boston Celtics returned to the top there.
Woo! We should
The
briefly
NHL
talk about the
Finals,
fact. Are you aware of how bad the NBA's numbers are?
like attendance numbers or watching numbers,
Attendance, viewership, everything. So they're way down in popularity. And people
because
talk
it's
about
like
it,
the same two teams all the damn time.
but it's not just that it's the same two teams. It's that it's not competitive basketball anymore.
No, not
It's
anymore.
Yeah,
There's
it's
like
about guys who can shoot the three.
and it's well, that's part of it. That's like when baseball went to the shift, like it became all about the home run.
Right.
And I think I really absolutely agree with the rule of banning the shift on in baseball because it allows hitters, pull hitters to get hits and not always swing for the fences. But yeah, the NBA's gotta really start fixing its game because I've to be honest, I really haven't watched any NBA games in several years because one, it's you basically have like two or three super teams. It's kind of very much like baseball, two or three super teams with a lot of money that are willing to spend to put together these super teams, and then you've got a whole league full of teams that are just mediocre, and
Right.
they're there to sell tickets and to fall to these teams in the playoffs. There's not really a competitive playoff in basketball. It's like you don't see many stunning upsets in NBA basketball.
Right.
Um,
I mean, we were talking about this the other day when the Cavaliers came back against Steph Curry.
yeah,
That's probably the last exciting final.
yeah.
Um,
But
it's
in the NHL, we had the Florida Panthers winning the Stanley Cup. That was a remarkable comeback for them. They almost blew it.
Ooh.
I'm happy to see a non-traditional market win the game, and again, it prevented Canada from getting the Stanley Cup back. It's 32 years, I believe. 30. It'll be 32 years this season.
The leaf blower, but
Yeah,
I
Operation
again,
Leaf Blower.
unless you can have the Winter Classic outdoors, I don't want you to win the Stanley Cup.
You know what? The first outdoor game, NHL game, was in Las Vegas
Really?
in a parking lot by Caesar's Palace.
Oh, but
And Rangers
yeah,
Rangers and the Kings.
they
And
did it with like an ice floor thing. It
they
wasn't
they
frozen
no,
pond.
it was ice.
Yeah.
Now it was very hard to maintain because it was at the end of summer, but they were able to get an
Wow.
ice. Yeah, it was preseason. But yeah, the Kings and the Rangers played a preseason game, and right after the Rangers won the Stanley Cup.
Never knew
Um,
that.
the they can. I mean, they had one in Dallas a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Well, I
I
mean,
think
you clearly can do it outdoors, but I want
yeah.
it like not just outdoors, but outdoors on a body of water, not on a rink. I want it like Mystery Alaska.
Yeah, there you go. I think that would be interesting. Like, there the canals in Ottawa where people line up on the banks to watch people skate down the canals. That would
Yeah.
be awesome. That would be a great way to see a game. But
Yeah, I can't remember what the scenario was, but it was one of my favorite. And I have a love hate thing with Ovechkin. Mostly, I hate Ovechkin, but he's doing an interview with somebody, and it's an American player, and they had gone back to Russia for some reason to do a charity event in Russia,
yeah,
and it was outdoors, and the American guy was like, "I can't believe how cold it is," and Ovechkin's like, "He has never played hockey in cold weather before." Crazy.
yeah. Let's see. Major League Baseball, the Yankees won, or I'm sorry, the Yankees lost in a sweep
To the
to the Los
Dodgers,
Angeles Dodgers. The NFL, Kansas City
AC won.
won their
Yeah, second in a row.
championship, second one in a row.
We're
Yeah,
going to the three-peat now.
we'll have another Super Bowl post game show coming up in February. College football, it was
Washington.
Michigan. Michigan. No,
right?
Michigan beat
beating
Washington in the finals.
Yeah.
And another piece of sports news that came towards the end of the year is that Saudi Arabia has been granted the World Cup in 2032. So, second time in 3 tournaments, the cup will be held in the Middle East, probably late in the year versus that midsummer.
It's interesting. A lot of European countries don't want it anymore because of the FIFA
Mandates.
regulations.
Yeah, the mandates to build new stadiums. It's just like the Olympics. It used to be you'd have like 6 or 7 cities vying for the Olympics, and
Yep.
now cities are just like they're not getting involved anymore, and it's because the IOC and these international bodies want all these brand new buildings built for these games. And I think that's why Boston had the backlash it did when it was
It
up
was
for the Olympics.
so. I mean, I was there. I was part of the No Olympics in Boston
Yeah,
group, and I mean, it was crazy. Boston has more than enough venues, right? I mean, 24 Olympic swimming pool venues in Boston. So many colleges, stuff like that. They could do everything.
yeah, you
And
can do everything. In Los Angeles has got their
yeah,
existing infrastructure that they'll be hosting the
yep,
next Summer Olympics. I think that's where it's gonna end up, where we're gonna start going off to some far flung locales like Almaty, Kazakhstan,
I think
or you know
Elon Musk has said he's going to build an Olympic venue on the moon.
on Mars.
Yeah,
Mars, we're going to Mars.
and or in Antarctica, and
Either way,
yeah,
at
I think
least
that's the best choice. Anyway,
all right.
yeah, let's do the quiz.
Let's quiz it. Get quizzical.
Getting quizzy with it.
There it is. There we go. Year in Review News Quiz 2024. We see the bridge that went down. We see Taylor Swift, who is all over the place. She actually won the Super Bowl in 2024.
Right.
And then, of course, that iconic picture of Donald Trump with blood on his face, fist in the air. All right. Question number 1. Republican Donald Trump won the popular vote over Democrat Kamala Harris by what margin in the United States presidential election? 1.5 percentage points, 3.8 percentage points, 6 percentage points, or 8.4 percentage points? I think it was 1.5.
I'm guessing 1.5.
I don't think it was that big.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare for a Republican to win the popular vote, so
yeah,
I agree.
Yep, he received 49.8% of the popular vote to 48.3. So he didn't even get a plurality of the. Well, he got a plurality. He didn't get the majority of the American vote.
Thanks to Chase Oliver. Well,
there you go.
And others.
Question number 2. Which city hosted the Summer Olympics? We talked about this earlier. It's Paris.
Gay Paris.
Yes, oui.
Way. Question number 3. And this was a big story towards the end of the year. We just ran out of time to discuss it. But Syrian President Bashar al-Assad was ousted from power in a swift and stunning rebellion. Which country granted him asylum?
Russia.
It was Russia.
Iran, Canada, Mexico,
opened up an optometry store and lens crafters.
Yeah, lens crafters.
But I did hear also his wife is divorcing him and leaving him.
It couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
she didn't mind being queen. She has no interest in living in Russia.
I don't have much interest in living in Russia either. So, question number 4. A cargo ship crashed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge in which city, causing it to collapse? Baltimore, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, or Boston?
Baltimore.
That is
Balmer.
right.
I have no idea. What is Baltimore? Right. Philadelphia is a city of brotherly love. Pittsburgh is Steel City. Boston is Fuck You City. Baltimore is
Crab Cake City.
Okay.
Old Bay City. It's the Old Bay City. Question number 5. United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down outside of a New York City hotel. Where was the suspect captured? Airport, shopping center, fast food restaurant, or subway station?
Fast food.
Fast food, yes. Easiest quiz ever so far.
Altoona, PA.
Yep. I'm still blown away by the Altoona pizza. It just,
I'm with you on that one.
all right. Question number 6. Which tennis legend known as King of the Clay retired after winning 22 Grand Slam singles titles during his career? Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, Novak Djokovic, or Andy Murray?
I know this.
I'll say what? Should I wait to say, or
No, you can say it, Joe.
I was going to say Nadal.
It is indeed Nadal.
Oh, I haven't even been checking the answers here. Sorry, everybody. It was Nadal, earned the nickname for his unprecedented success playing on that surface. He won the French Open a record 14 times.
Wow.
All right, question number 7. Which country elected its first female president this year? Nigeria, Mexico, Brazil, or Pakistan?
I know.
Not only first female president,
First Jewish female president.
first Jewish president as well.
I'm going to guess Brazil. I don't know.
Mexico.
Avocados from Mexico. Yes.
Cool.
Claudia Sheinbaum won a landslide to become the first female president of Mexico.
Now, let me just point out, right? Did you ever watch 30 Rock? Isn't it the Sheinbaum wig company that is the secret company that owns Comcast and NBC?
Maybe that's how she got her fortune.
Exactly.
Question number 8. Shortly after the November election, President Joe Biden pardoned his son Hunter Biden, who faced sentencing on which charges? Drug possession, insurance fraud, money laundering, gun possession, and taxes.
We know this.
2 things that we don't care about.
Right.
Yes, the president pardoned his son for federal gun and tax convictions. Janice got the Mexico question right. Question number 9. A total solar eclipse in April created stunning views in North America. When is the next total solar eclipse with a coast-to-coast path across the United States? 2026, 2020, 2032, 2038, 2045. I'm gonna have to go to the audience for this one. I'm thinking it's a while though. Coast to coast, and this one didn't even go coast to coast. It went north to south, essentially, southwest to northeast.
Yeah, it entered in Texas, I think.
Yeah,
and exited in over Lake Erie.
Yeah.
No, it hit Maine too. But yeah, I have no idea.
I'll guess 2038.
I support
2038. Anybody in the audience, please help us. Obi-Wan, your only hope. Oops, I did something bad here. There we go. All right, we're going to go 2038. Let's do this. 2045.
Wow. That is a
next solar eclipse with a coast-to-coast path spanning the lower 48 will occur August 12th of 2045.
20 years from now.
I'll just throw this in. I'll throw this in too, since we're doing a yearly recap. I'm sure everyone saw the story. The Parker solar probe just a few days ago came closest to the sun, traveling at over 400,000 miles an hour, less than 4 million miles from the sun.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And it will continue to make passes. It literally was in the sun's atmosphere.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to think that those solar flares go pretty high and might get clipped by a solar flare.
They had a heat shield on this thing that they said could get up to 2,500 degrees, but it kept the instruments on the other side at room temperature. Fascinating.
That's crazy.
It is.
That's the same technology from the McDLT.
Hot side stays hot, cold side. Why have they never gone back to the McDLT? I thought that was, it's a brilliant sandwich. Question number 10. Which Russian opposition leader died in a penal colony under mysterious circumstances? Ilya Yashin, Alexei Navalny, Vladimir Kara-Murza, or Yevgeny Prigozhin?
I know this because the director of engineering for my company was Navalny's tech guy, and
Oh,
had
wow.
to flee Russia, and now lives in Israel.
I mean, I don't blame you for leaving Russia. So, yep, Alexei Navalny was outspoken critic of Russian President Vladimir Putin, and his death sparked international outrage. Oh my God, we got more questions. How many questions we got?
All right, that's okay.
Dang,
We can pace ourselves. I got more speed.
we're crushing it. All
We're
right.
crushing it.
Question number 11. Eric Adams was indicted on public corruption charges. He serves as mayor of which city? This one's easy. Detroit, New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago?
New York, big city of dreams. The things in New York ain't always what they seem. Too much.
That's right.
Too many people.
Question number 12. Which hurricane made landfall in Florida, wreaked havoc across the southeast, including deadly flooding in North Carolina?
It's
Milton,
the Greek
Helene.
hurricane.
What's that?
It's the Greek hurricane.
Milton, Helene, Debbie, or Beryl? That was Helene, wasn't it?
It was Helene.
Yep, came ashore on the Florida Gulf Coast in September and caused catastrophic flooding in North Carolina.
Now, you know, one of the interesting things about this is that the weather reports were very accurate. Like a day beforehand, they're like, we think there's going to be catastrophic flooding here. So everybody prepare. But nobody had ever seen catastrophic flooding in
Not that level of catastrophic flooding.
Exactly. And so nobody knew what it was going to be like.
Yeah. Question number 13. Which movie won Best Picture at the 96th Academy Awards? Barbie, Maestro, Killers of the Flower Moon, or Oppenheimer?
I know that Barbie didn't win.
No, she did not win.
Because somebody said Barbie not winning is the most Barbie story ever.
It was either Killers of the Flower Moon or Oppenheimer.
I'm pretty sure it was Oppenheimer.
That's my guess.
Yeah.
Yep. Oppenheimer took home 7 Oscars, including Best Picture. Question number 14. There were 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump's life. Where did they take place? Florida and California, New York and Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania and Florida, or New York and Washington, D.C.? We know this one. Florida. Yep. Yeah. Shots were fired at Trump during a Pennsylvania campaign rally, and the Secret Service targeted a man with a rifle outside of a Florida golf club. It wasn't his. Well, it wasn't Mar-a-Lago. Ken got it right as well. Question number 15. Which NFL team won the Super Bowl for the 2nd year in a row? Philadelphia Eagles, San Francisco 49ers, Cincinnati Bengals, or Kansas City Chiefs?
It was the chefs.
The Chiefs.
Great googly moogly.
All right. Question number 16. Nearly everyone living in Gaza has been displaced by the Israeli wars against Hamas. What is the population of Gaza? 1.2 million, 2.1 million, 4.4 million, or 5.6 million?
I think it's 5.6.
I think it's 5.6 as well.
Yeah.
I'll say the same.
Ken was a little salty about the about the Super Bowl.
But he's right. You can't deny he's right.
Oh no, 2.1 million.
Wow.
Wow. All right. UN estimates the population of Gaza to be around 2.1 million people. All right. Question number 17. Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race after what happened? He was hospitalized with COVID-19. He lost a delegate vote of the Democratic Convention. The Supreme Court removed him from the ballot.
Wow.
Or he performed poorly at a debate.
I mean, technically, it's after COVID as well.
Yeah, it was. I think it was. I think that's what caused him to drop out.
It's really the debate, though.
It really is the debate.
It can't not be the debate.
I'm gonna say it's gonna be the COVID-19, but we'll pick the debate because that really was the catalyst of him dropping out. Oh, they did go with it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 18. Which state's top court ruled that frozen embryos are children, and those who destroy them can be held liable for wrongful death? Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, or Tejas?
it is also the same state where Hee Haw is considered educational television.
I think that does not narrow it down at all.
It's where somebody came from with a banjo on their knee to visit Susanna. It's Alabama.
Oh, is it Alabama?
Oh, did you not know this? The song?
I can't remember.
I had to run it through
I've
my
heard the
head.
song before. I just can't remember the lyrics of the song.
Oh, Susanna, oh, don't you cry for me. I come from Alabama with a banjo on my knee.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right.
Yeah, you
Supreme
killed
Court
our ruling score.
No, we missed 3 already.
Those ones don't count.
All right, yeah. So, Alabama Supreme Court ruling cast doubt on the future of those embryos and in vitro fertilization, which while putting reproductive rights in the spotlight. But it didn't, as surprising as as big as that issue was in previous elections, it did not carry the day for Harris.
Yep.
Question number 19: which troubled test flight left 2 astronauts in space, still in space, for longer than planned? Artemis 2, Polaris Dawn, SpaceX Crew 9, or Boeing Starliner?
I just point out in the picture, it just says Boeing Starliner in the bottom right-hand corner of the picture upside down.
It's kind of given. It's kind of a given.
Yeah, Yeah, that's, it was a rough year for both.
Truly.
Question number 20. Taylor Swift's Eras Tour is the highest grossing concert tour in history. Which solo artist held the previous record? Pink, Beyonce, Elton John, or Ed Sheeran?
I see at the bottom it says correct. Elton John's Farewell Yellow Brick Road Tour grossed more than $900 million. Somebody guess
I was
Elton
going
John.
to guess Elton myself.
I'm going to go Ed Sheeran. All right.
Look at
Well, I clicked it.
Oh,
No bueno. But it says correct. I don't know.
all right. 80%.
All right. Not bad. Trip down amnesia lane.
It's all good.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
All
the
right,
next time we're back, it'll be a new year.
Yeah. New year.
We'll come back with our resolutions.
New
Everybody should
year.
come with a new year resolution.
Same old ass me.
No. New resolutions.
New resolutions. I resolve not to resolve anything.
Well, I'll tell you what my resolutions are because it'll be the new year. I'm not going to tell you now.
All right.
Great.
I should say it, by the way.
Well, thanks everybody for watching us tonight, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, all the fun places. Give us a like, share, subscribe. We will be back with you next week on another fun and endearing episode of a very special episode of the Political Deep Dive. Have a good one, everybody.
As the world turns.